His Excellency David Hartman, Ambassador to Canada, His Excellency Endo from Japan, Saijan Nurminen, Ambassador of Finland, Constancy, Ambassador of Singapore, Ms. Juliana Nes, Ambassador of Slovenia. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As usual, I was invited through a text message by my good friends, the Manhid brothers, Indo and RP. Of course, they sent me formal invitations after. But it wasn't easy getting here today because we had changes in the budget schedule in the Senate. And of course, I had to be asked about restitution again. Or we had to be asked about why restitution. This representation, because that became a controversial statement when I was State Secretary of Justice prior to my 45-6 days. So I've been here for 46 days. Starting October 10, I think, if I'm doing the math right, or something like that, for this case. And it hasn't been easy. Pressure has been there, especially job. And what we actually concerned about is the theme of today's discussion, strengthening economic security and resilience. Because, as usual, this is not the first time we've seen a crisis of confidence happening to a country. My first experience with this was in 1983, when I was still a law student after Ninoy Aquino was assassinated at the Manila International Airport at that time. They started the crisis of confidence, and it's lasted for 3 years, which of course was not very good for the country. But finally was resolved after the People Power Revolution of 1986, where a new government was installed, democratic, and of course, with all the ideals of good governance in their minds. But what happened after that, of course, is still a mixed bag of achievements and problems. Achievements, because basically there were some good things about it. The restoration of democracy was one of them. The writing of the Constitution may have been a good one, but of course it's not perfect. And certain policies on liberalization may have been good. Of course, they may have been bad too. But really, is from whose point of view you're looking at. But that was the first crisis of confidence that I saw in government. Then after a few years, 1997, it was not really a crisis of confidence. It was more of the Asian financial crisis that we saw, where the country went off and had to tighten its belt because of the devaluation of the peso, the extreme drop in the price of the peso at the time. I remember that. And then in 1998, a new president was elected, and I served under that presidency. And I was then, about 37 years old, I was assistant secretary in the presidential management staff of President Joseph Ernesto Estrada. And I actually acted as an executive assistant to President Estrada after a few months. After we got to know each other in office, he asked me to assist him on a daily basis. So I was there up close with history. I knew what happened the whole time. And probably most of what happened, because I considered my hours after 8 to be personal time already. So I couldn't join in the other cabinet that was meeting after 8. But just the same, I ended up, I wrote the last letter of his presidency, which was a leave of absence from the position of president, which until now is not a clear note in history, since the Supreme Court was not really upright about it. They weren't very honest about that result. They ignored that message just because it was more politically convenient. And these shortcuts are what causes problems in our country. When we shortcut the process, things go wrong. And that's why today's meeting is very important, because probably we have to understand that these processes have to take time. And we have to be careful about everything we do, because once you miss a beat, the consequences can be bad for the country. So, well, I have a prepared speech, of course. And maybe I should start reading it so that we can have an organized flow first, and then maybe we can have an open forum later. Just to thank the Stratbase group for bringing us together again. For 10 years, this conference has helped the country take an honest look at itself, where we are, what threatens us, and what possibilities lie ahead. And I stand here today as the newly appointed Ombudsman for the 46 days with a simple message. Economic security begins with honest, transparent, and accountable governance. Let me begin with something many of you know too well. When investors assess a country, they don't just look at the numbers, charts, or demographic trends. They look at whether rules are followed, whether decisions are fair, whether the public money goes to where it should. In other words, they look for trust. And that is the basic issue today about government. And trust is fragile. It can take decades to build, and only one scandal will destroy it. This is why corruption is not just a governance issue. It is an economic threat. Every peso stolen from infrastructure is a bridge not built, a road left broken, a community left vulnerable. It is also a message to investors that the rules may not be as predictable as they hoped. This is where the Office of the Ombudsman enters the story. Not as an economic agency, but as a guardian of the conditions that make growth possible. Probably the most important condition is predictability. When I assumed office a few days ago, or a month or so ago, I made two early decisions. First, I lifted the restrictions on SAL-N access. Statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth of government officials were then closed to public scrutiny, and thus probably inviting impunity into the picture. Impunity of corruption. For years, it was a lockbox, hard to request, hard to obtain. But transparency cannot thrive behind closed doors. By opening access, we are telling the public, you deserve to know how we safeguard your trust. Second, I express support for live streaming of not just the Bicameral Conference Committee of the Budget, but even the proceedings inside the Ombudsman's office. When we do preliminary investigation, at least the public has a right to know what has been violated and who are the accused, so that then what the government is doing about it. These are not symbolic gestures. These are signals of a larger shift, a governance of culture where openness is the norm and not the exception. And behind the scenes, we are laying down deeper reforms. We are intensifying investigations in high-risk, high-value sectors, public infrastructure, procurement, revenue, and regulatory agencies, of which one by one I've been speaking to. These areas shape investor confidence more than any investment brochure ever could. As an example, digressing a bit from the speech, the other day I was with was it yesterday? The BIR commissioner. I invited the new BIR commissioner over to my office. Since we were neighbors in Quezon City. We work in the same road, what was known as the Agham Road, and now the Medium Defensor Santiago Road. And it was a very frank conversation that we had. And I went down straight to the nitty-gritty about the letters of authority and the way that investors were being treated, and businessmen were being treated by our revenue agencies. And I told him that that has to end. And I advocated, I was telling him, Charlie, that we need probably a contactless revenue payment system that will not, where nobody can actually interfere with the filing of such income tax returns or even any tax payments that are to be made. There has to be an early payment system that will not be interfered with by anybody before any LOAs ever come out. And even, of course, the suspension of LOAs for that matter, to stop it. Because, as he said, LOAs only generate 2% of revenue. But when you do the math, it actually generates more than 6% of revenue, but the other 4% is lost to the pockets of these people from the BIR. And the same thing with the Bureau of Customs. So these are the reforms that we want to be able to uplift and promote investor confidence. Something that had to be done yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, but were never done before. And well, it's too late to say that, but it's never too late to start advocating reform, and of course, meaning it, not just advocating it, but doing it and living it. We are modernizing fact-finding, using data analytics, digitized records, cyber forensics, and of course, with this comes a package of artificial intelligence to make things run faster and establish a baseline for everything that we do. So that all complaints that are filed with our office, nothing would materialize if only if it is weaponized. So we don't waste our time with many of these political interviews that are brought before the office of the Ombudsman. And we want to digitize our records. And well, corruption has become more sophisticated, and our tools must be as sophisticated as well. We're building a whole of government integrity system. We recently signed a memorandum of agreement with the ARTA, Anti-Red Authority, to strengthen ease of doing business. And on December 9, we will host a national anti-corruption summit to align government, private sector, and civil society toward one vision. And the other day, actually, I did digress a bit again, I invited the chairman of the National Telecom, NTC, National Telecommunications Commission, and told them, you have to stop protecting the players in the industry. These telecoms people should not be protected by our agency. We should be protecting the consumer. We have to think of consumer rights first before anything else. And it has been a sad thing. I mean, when I drive along Jupiter Street here in Makati, and I'm talking to somebody on the phone, and the call is dropped 4 times in the prime district of the country, there's something wrong. Not just with the telecom, but with the NTC. And when I told them when I asked them about the system of fines, at 5,000 a day for every violation, I said, that's peanuts. You are doing that for the telco companies and not to improve anything. So I told them to make it, to be more strict in the monitoring of the performance of these franchise holders who are supposed to serve us but are actually natural monopolies. That makes life hard for us anyways, especially data. When you have a data plan and your data does not come to you when you need it, I think that everybody has had the experience already. They have to improve that service. That's just one of the jobs of the Ombudsman. Public interest, of course. And yes, cases are moving. We have already filed the first batch of flood control cases before the Sandigan Bayan. More cases are coming. And we're working with the court for continuous trials. No delays, no unnecessary resets. What actually spurred us to do this more and talk to the courts more is the dismissal of cases of graft due to inordinate delay. And when people are told to slow down so that they can take a breather from the hustle and bustle of litigation, and it takes 6 years to do preliminary investigation, there must be something wrong with the investigator. So we're doing something about that too. And accountability must not only be real, it must be felt. Today's theme is economic security and resilience. Much of the conversation on resilience focuses on external forces, geopolitics, climate, global markets, but resilience has a domestic front as well. We cannot expect investors to trust us if we are unwilling to trust ourselves. We cannot seek international partnerships if our own internal systems are weak or do not work. So transparency actually builds confidence. Confidence attracts investment, and investment creates jobs, and jobs build stability, and stability builds resilience. It's all a process. So the chain begins with integrity. Let me be clear. The Ombudsman cannot do this alone. The government agencies must embrace open data and digital systems. When we arrived at the office of the Ombudsman more than a month ago, everything was still being done snail-mail. And the order to digitize came immediately. And we are about to bid out, or have we finished our terms of reference? We're about to. Anyway, we're almost there. To bid out the digitization of our office. What a waste, because space that can be used for people to be working are used to store dusty documents that will have nowhere to go. And the private sector must demand and practice ethical business. I think that's the other side of the coin. And civil society must continue asking hard questions, and the public must hold us all, every one of us, to honest standards. Good governance is a national responsibility. As I go to work each day, I carry 3 principles. Integrity, non-negotiable, a non-negotiable standard. Innovation, because modern corruption requires modern tools. Inclusion, because justice means nothing if only a few people benefit from it. And innovation is so important because in these days of litigating corruption issues, there's one tool that is most important to the investigator that has not been tapped in this country as of yet. The telephone. All our telephones contain all the information that we are all about. In fact, the analytics of telephones know us better than ourselves, if you look at it. So the age of cyber warrants, cyber tools, is so important in proving a case. And reconstructing telephone records should not be a problem since we have the cloud up there. that can actually store all the data that is in our telephones. So we just have to go with the flow, where the evidence takes us. Our mission is the same one written in the Constitution 1987, or decades ago. The Ombudsman is the protector of the people. And I intend to honor that mandate fully. Let me leave you with this thought. A nation becomes resilient not only through strong markets or large budgets, but through the character of the institutions and integrity of its leaders. If we strengthen transparency today, we secure economic security tomorrow. So it's going to be a long ride. This term is for 7 years. And hopefully, at the end of 7 years, we will have nothing more to do. That is the prayer of every ombudsman, I think. That because we've done such a good job, and the institution is so stable, corruption will be obsolete because we will catch anybody who does it. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ombudsman Remulla. We appreciate your perspective on deepening integrity, transparency, and accountability in public service. So we are honored to be joined by Ombudsman for a little more time to answer some few questions from the audience. To be moderated again by Ms. Regina.
I'm so sorry, I know everybody's sick of me, but this is unplanned. We are, very honored that the Ombudsman has a bit more time this afternoon, so we're gonna try to get some things out of him. First off, a big day for you today. Obviously, Sec Vince was just here earlier. They came from your office, recommended charges against the former House Speaker and Zaldi Ko, of course. What's the plan there?
Actually, we've been investigating Saldico and the former speaker, since weeks ago. We've been on our horses, trying to ride this through and get the facts right. It's not easy. Maybe I should first tell you that the former speaker is a very close friend.
Yeah. You were fraternity brothers.
We are fraternity brothers. We were there at the same time in UP. I was ahead of him by a few years. He joined our fraternity when I was the leader of the fraternity. And we were together in Congress. He was the majority leader, and I acted as senior deputy majority leader. So how close can that be? But it's about the country. We have a hierarchy of values that we espouse, even within our fraternity. It's always country first. I think Fred Pascual would know that. He's our fraternity brother. It's something that has to happen because this country is waiting for redemption. Well, we have to be able to make sense out of this crazy episode in our history. It's crazy. I don't think there's a better word for it because they played with insane amounts of money. And if you were watching the hearings in the Senate, they showed a table full of cash as if it was nothing. And that's all hard-earned money of the taxpayers who worked their butts off and who worked their lives off with their blood and sweat. And they had to pay these taxes, which just came to be playthings with people who want to play with people's money. So, Martin and Azadico, well, maybe in the next few hours, something will come out. Because we filed a case already with the Sandigan Bayan.
Against,
But more against Sandico.
yes, correct. The
With
first batch,
Speaker
yeah.
Martin, we're still at it. Just put it there.
And the recommended charges are either plunder, graft, or direct bribery, correct?
With Sandico, yes, Sandico already.
With speaker?
Speaker, everything is possible. Anything is possible.
You told me before on the show that you're actively avoiding plunder as a crime because
Yes.
it's notoriously difficult to prove because of the jurisprudence. Has
Yes.
it come to that you feel?
This is the problem here. Historically, the Supreme Court says what the Supreme Court says is the law. And when they interpret a statute that was meant to extract accountability in a very liberal manner, then we have a problem. That's why we are rethinking our options always when we file plunder charges. Because no one ever gets convicted of plunder. And some of these theories are just insane. When you look at the jurisprudence, some of them are just insane. Some of them you cannot live with it. As a lawyer, it's very hard to absorb if you really were honest with your, if you were looking at it from an honest point of view.
Right.
Yeah, so
the
the easier one to prove will be malversation.
correct.
Malversation through falsification, that's according to, when you have ghost projects, that's actually the case. Or even some substandard projects, because a project 50, 60, 70, 80% complete is fully paid with a certification that, I mean, when you fully pay a project, when you pay it in full, it means the work is complete, but most of it is incomplete. That's why we're looking at that statute to actually send people to jail for life. That is the more effective one.
Through malversation.
Malversation through falsification or
Right.
malversation just
But
malversation.
isn't it the trade-off is less jail time if you charge them with a lesser crime?
No, it's not a lesser crime because in the statute books, malversation above 8.8 billion pesos is already punishable. Life imprisonment.
Perpetual, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
perpetual.
reclusion perpetua.
Reclusion perpetua.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you're at this point still looking into what can be filed against Speaker Remulla.
We're looking at all the facts. Let's put it that way. We're looking at all the facts. What projects he worked with Saudi directly under his jurisdiction, and other things that would be pointed out with evidence. Because evidence is always the key. Without evidence, you don't convict anybody. You don't even file charges. We have to gather the evidence properly.
And he has called you. He called you last night, didn't he? Right? Or you spoke to each other.
He called me. Actually, I talked to him before I was appointed, and he tried to call me after I was appointed. But I stopped answering his calls.
Oh, so you stopped answering the calls?
Yes.
Okay.
He tries to send messages to some mutual friends, but it doesn't mean much anymore because we are actively investigating a crime that no one can interfere with. It's a job that I swore to do. I took an oath to do this job.
So time for talking is over. You brought up an important point, and earlier we kept talking about institutional reform being necessary at this point, and we can't talk about institutional reform without talking about reforming the judiciary. You mentioned already talking to the Supreme Court. What are the odds that we can get some of these processes rewritten, for instance?
Actually, I've been talking to the Supreme Court for a long time. When I was still Secretary of Justice, I was working with them. And we already introduced reforms. There was a time that the Supreme Court would also be the one to say whether a person should be charged or not, because preliminary investigation was still a court function. But under my leadership, we were able to get it back to the DOJ, so that it became an executive function. That nobody can just play around with the institution. So Supreme Court relented and gave us our request. And the past few weeks, I've been in constant touch with the Senior Associate Justice, Marvin Clonen, who was my classmate in the UP College of Law, good friend. And we've been exchanging text messages. And I think it was around 2 weeks ago that or a little more than 2 weeks ago, that I visited the Chief Justice together with the Senior Associate Justice to discuss the cases that had to run properly and faster than usual, because the inordinate delay theory always worked with defense counsel who are paid oodles of money. And this cannot work anymore. That's why I was advocating continuous trial. Continuous trial means that the moment you file a motion for continuous trial and it's granted, the moment you're given the floor by the judiciary to present your evidence, all the evidence is ready. That's why we have to make sure that our evidence is gathered properly, documented properly, and presented in the right manner. It is how all courtrooms function, I think, throughout the world, hopefully throughout the world. It's, I think, the expectation of everybody that our court system should work that way.
But Ombudsman, hasn't it also happened before that there is continuous trial, but the next trial is scheduled 2 months down the road? Or
you agree on a schedule. You actually agree on a schedule. There's a pre-trial order, and the court will come up with an order, a schedule. You're given so many trial dates to present your evidence, and so many trial dates to present your defense, and then everything's for resolution by the court. That's how it works. But there are many attractive options to many of these highly paid lawyers, the best lawyers money can buy. They usually end up in the hospital, unable to attend a trial, research it. I mean, they will have every device possible. But I'm a lawyer. I know all of these tricks, and the Supreme Court knows these tricks. We're not newborns here. We know that this cannot be accepted anymore.
And the reason we're talking about the Supreme Court, by the way, is we already expect that it will go up to the Supreme Court. I mean, the court
Yes. And there's one thing that I was discussing with a court insider, and I was asking a question. Why is it that people who are convicted still are allowed to post bail when it's a corruption issue? Why are they still running around after being convicted of a corruption issue? And the answer is not as clear yet as now. But I think eventually they will cancel this kind of behavior of being liberal with people's money, because it has to end. The pit of cases were a terrible chapter in our lives, because they could have been convicted. Many of these people who were acquitted could have been convicted. But for some reason, most of them were acquitted. And there was even a case where somebody was acquitted but asked to return money. And is that guy really innocent? When you're asked to return money that doesn't belong to you?
That's the argument they're making. I'm innocent because I was acquitted, although I'm being asked to return.
Yeah, but let me be clear also. You're running a country. You want things to happen as quickly as possible. But you have to gather the proper evidence. And there are other options available. And these options must be considered also. Plea bargains, with the return of money for lighter sentences is possible if taken early in the proceedings, not to waste people's time. Because if you do the math with all of these cases right now, we may run out of Sandigan Bayan divisions by the time all of this is over. We might have to legislate new divisions. But the problem is, most of the accused are legislators. Would they want to legislate more divisions to make the result faster? So that's why we have to consider all options. You have to consider what can be done and what should be done as a sense of duty to the country. If you want to plead guilty and you return the money, okay. Maybe as a first step, we can do that. But it has to be early in the game. We cannot do this as a last resort of people who are about to be convicted.
But surely as well, plea bargains shouldn't apply to everyone. in this scheme, right? Some are more guilty than others.
Of course, of course. The gravity of the offense is actually what counts here. But when there's an element of deceit already, falsification, there's an element of deceit, it's a ghost project, nothing ever came out of it. I don't think that there's any plea bargain available for that kind of offense.
Okay, I'm going to ask the Ombudsman one last question, but also those of you who have questions in your mind, please get ready. I will open the floor right after this. And my question to you is, what is the plan for restitution and getting some of these stolen funds back? I mean, that's something that Secretary Vince talked about as well earlier. You know, that it's incredibly difficult to trace. That's the problem, right? So how would you go about it?
The other day, early in this week, probably Tuesday, the DOJ prosecutors were in my office. As you know, I was Secretary of Justice before, and this investigation started when I was still Secretary of Justice, and we were investigating cases because we handled the Witness Protection Program. So we made a rundown of the possibilities. And in the Witness Protection Program, you have a memorandum of agreement with the witness. But the witness has the duty to tell all. To tell all so that they can be good witnesses to convict the bigger fish or the more guilty parties. And one of the conditions that we are really setting is restitution. You know, you cannot be a government witness and walk away in the sunset with all your loot. That shouldn't happen. So restitution is one of the things we're doing as a condition. And of course, a lot of research about the truth of the matter. Because when they say they can surrender this much money only to save more money for themselves, it cannot happen. And the moment that we find out something, we cancel any, we can unilaterally cancel any agreement with them. So it has to be a good faith thing, and that they return what they can return, or what we know they can return.
How are you going to go after the assets that are already abroad?
Well, that's another matter. It's we have to do more financial investigation for that. The important thing is to bring them home first when they're abroad. I think that's the more bigger question, because time was people would hide in South America and they would be beyond reach. But in this day and age, no one is beyond reach. If you go to, let's say, Argentina, a huge country, beautiful country, and decide to live there, the people there care. If you use their social media to tell people that these fugitives are hiding in their country, I don't think they would stand for it. I don't think any country in this world would stand to be a safe haven for people who have stolen money from government. I think social media will be a key in finding these people and taking them home. And there are other tools. We took home Arnie Teves from Timor-Leste. And how did we take home Arnie Teves? So many people in the government were in the payroll of Arnie Teves. They gave us stories, they gave us runarounds, and we waited. We waited for the right time. When we were about to host the ASEAN, we released a statement. We will block the membership of Timor-Leste unless they surrender Arnie Teves. And they did. They did. They caught him and they allowed us to bring him home. We have to do this. The diplomatic community is one important factor here in helping the world rid of corruption. Because it may happen to you too, to the other countries, and they will want our cooperation. It's a better, safer haven for fugitives than any other country. Because you have warm beaches, no winter, friendly people, and people who actually will be good to you if you're here. So maybe if they can return the favor, we will return the favor too.
I didn't know that condition that we set on Timor-Leste, by the way. Do we have any questions on the floor? It's okay, he's friendly. Please, could you please, I can't see you, so could you please state your name and identify your affiliation?
Yeah, Lloyd William Shaco from Phoenix. Okay. Just a quick question, Ombudsman. Lately in the news, the family case was withdrawn by the Ombudsman from the Sandigan Bayan. As a layperson, could you explain why you withdrew the case of the family from the Sandigan Bayan?
Okay. It's actually family cases. There are 10 or more than 10 cases family filed with the Sandigan Bayan. But I had this gut feeling from the very start. Why the haste in filing when I was about to enter the office? They only filed it in August after the retirement of the last ombudsman. And then, of course, you suspect something. You can smell something. Actually, you can smell a rat a mile away. And that happened to be the case. It's like an antivirus. It was an inoculation to give them the right to double jeopardy, against double jeopardy. So, we do the cases. We're reconfiguring everything now. There was even a case in the family cases where no damage to government was alleged. There was no damage to government alleged. Thus, you confuse the jurisdiction of the court. Is it within the jurisdiction of Sandigan Bayan when you have a defective pleading? Most of these pleadings were defective, I will tell you. And we're still working on these cases now. As my young assistants would, actually I always say young assistants because I took with me to the Ombudsman's office 2 of my youngest assistants in the DOJ, Miko and Luigi, 34 and 31 years old. And right now, there are 90 lawyers, top-notchers, honor graduates, debaters, moot court specialists applying. And we're going to take in most of them. We're going to take in a lot of young cadre who will just do this job and march on so that this country will have a better future. Because the youth should be in. And I believe in that. I've taken some experience, of course. We need people who have been through everything also. But we're taking in the younger ones. And the applications have been impressive. And we're freeing up the space. We're digging up our savings so we can be able to pay good money to people who will join us. But this good money is actually good money for starting lawyers or young lawyers. But it will be enough to live an honorable life and, of course, an exciting life. I think that's what we all want when we're young.
Great effort in trying to sell the job, Ombudsman. Do we have any other questions? Please, could you pass her a mic, please? If you could just identify yourself and your affiliation.
Good afternoon. I'm Berncy from the Foundation for Economic Freedom. Sir, it's great that you've lifted the veil on the SALNs, but based on what's been made public, we have to really get to the bottom of the truthfulness or correctness of the assets being declared. Many of them are unbelievable. What are we doing about it? And then second question, how do we make sure that the changes that we're implementing now will be sustained beyond the administrations? Because we've been on this roller coaster, we get into these crises, we do what's needed to be done, and then the next administration could just, throw it all away. How do we make it stick now? Thank you.
How do you make an institution last? I think it's a question of actually, you beg the question because how do we build an institution in the first place? How do we build an institution that will not be subject to political change or almost an immutable institution? That's the hardest question to answer. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I will not have a specific answer for that. But I think that when we get young people to come in and have them, empower them to be able to solve these problems, run a transparent way of governance, make people become stakeholders in everything you do, I think it's possible. When people get used to transparency, anything built in secrecy will be suspect. I think that's the first step towards making it a better institution. There's no other way. Everybody has to be a stakeholder and should care about what people do, what government people do behind closed doors. I think this is the only way to do it, is transparency from the very beginning, so that people will get used to the idea of transparency and will reject any form of secrecy, especially secrecy is always towards the darker end of governance. I hope that at least assuages.
But maybe to take her question further, Ombudsman, are there any guardrails that we can put in place today to make sure any convictions will not get overturned 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road?
Well, the Supreme Court has to be a partner here. We're just one part of the equation. When you talk about the justice system, we are the prosecutors, we are the ones who are charging people, and the Supreme Court is the one with the other lower courts who are convicting people. And we have to ask the same thing from our courts. I think that it's fair that if we are transparent as a constitutional commission, we can ask the executive to be transparent. We should be able to ask the judiciary to be transparent. I think that men in dark robes in dark rooms are no already. And it must be something that has to start from the Supreme Court. And I've been in dialogue with them. Hopefully, they will realize how urgent this problem is. But I know the Chief Justice. He just wants to leave a good legacy. He's a good man. And all of these things, I think, are getting to him already, got to him already. And actually, the reforms that we're doing with the justice system are very encouraging. But I see him following this kind of setup already of transparency in every phase of governance. That's the only way.
And then, sir, her first question on SAL-ins, please. The SAL-ins.
Silence.
A lot of these
Well,
SAL-ins are very untruthful.
Yeah. Because there was a ruling again that silence can be corrected, and we have to have a standard, and it's something that we are addressing right now. The first thing is lifestyle checks. Second is actually tax payments, ITRs. We have a memorandum of agreement with the BIR. There's an order of President Arroyo about sharing the ITR with the Office of the Ombudsman. I think that we'll be using a law that is meant to forfeit illegally acquired property. And that is the only requirement. And that's going to be very bloody. It's not going to be easy for us. Actually, some people are not talking to my children anymore. It's true. This has really burned some bridges all across. Many of our friends or political allies before, because I was a politician, stopped talking to my children because of what I do. And it just has to happen. We are doing already the lifestyle check. We are looking at the ITRs of people in government. And of course, we will file forfeiture cases against ill-gotten wealth. And this is something, this is going to be the long haul. That's why we think that we will need more divisions in the Sandigan Bayan. Because right now, it's very idle. The last 40 days, maybe 6 cases were raffled off. Actually, because in the Sandigan Bayan, only the Ombudsman files cases in the Sandigan Bayan. And the Ombudsman's office was inactive for a long time. And it's only now that there is an emphasis on filing cases and making people accountable. So we'll see. It's hard to promise anything. I'm no longer in the business of politics. This is more for accountability already. That's why I came here, because you have to see that there's somebody responsible for cleaning up the mess. And we will clean up the mess properly, I think.
You're absolutely right. I think the Ombudsman is the only agency that has motu proprio power to conduct correct, and
Yes.
also lifestyle checks.
Yes.
So we need to
Lifestyle checks, this is being done by the Department of Finance for the revenue agencies. But it's less effective because there are friends within and there are interrelationships. But I will be getting some people from the Department of Finance to be on secondment to my office so that we can have access to the database of customs and the BIR, because these are the two important agencies where they say it's an impossible task. But let's see if it's impossible when we start looking at everything.
Right. So Ombudsman, we have to wrap up, but I'll give you one last chance to address the audience of distinguished diplomats and businessmen to talk about the fight that you're waging, especially in light of the fact that President Marcos has promised people to be jailed before Christmas, by Christmas. So are we going to get there?
We will get there.
People behind bars by
Just
Christmas.
we just have to be patient with the process, because we cannot violate rights to people. We have to give them their due process. We have to give them the full benefit of the Bill of Rights. But there will be other tools that we'll be using that will make us exact accountability better. And you'll be finding out in the next few days when we maximize what can be harnessed from the powers given to us by the Ombudsman Law of 1989. It's you research on it and you'll see that there's so much given to the Ombudsman to do, and the Ombudsman is given all the tools which have never been used, but of course they will be used this time.
That's a very bold promise, and on behalf of the room, we wish you more power, Ombudsman Remulla. I think I speak for everyone when I say we are all behind you in this fight, and we wish you the very best.
I think wishing for power is not what we want here. I think we wish us success. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ombudsman Remulla. So let's just have a quick photo opportunity before we proceed with the next panel.